What if I told you that Joel Goldsmith discovered 4 simple words that transformed thousands of lives, healed the incurable, and opened doors to miracles that medical science couldn't explain? These aren't magic words or religious incantations. They're based on a profound spiritual principle that Goldsmith spent decades perfecting. He used them to heal tuberculosis, cancer, financial ruin, and broken relationships when nothing else worked. The results were so consistent that skeptics called them impossible. But here's what made Goldsmith different from other healers. He understood that true healing happens not through force or struggle, but through a complete shift in consciousness. He discovered that when you align with divine principle, miracles become natural. These 4 words contain the essence of mystical Christianity and practical metaphysics. They've been tested by thousands of students worldwide, and today you'll learn exactly how to use them in your own life for transformation you never thought possible. The 4 words are deceptively simple: I and the Father. But before you dismiss them as too basic, understand that Goldsmith discovered these words contain the entire secret of spiritual power. They represent the most profound realization in human consciousness. Most people live believing they're separate from divine source, struggling against circumstances, fighting for survival. This separation consciousness creates every problem you face: illness, lack, fear, relationship conflicts. It's the root of all human suffering. But when Jesus said, "I and the Father are one," he revealed the fundamental truth of existence. Goldsmith understood that this wasn't just Jesus speaking. It was the divine nature speaking through human consciousness. It's your true identity speaking. When you truly grasp I and the Father, something revolutionary happens in your consciousness. The sense of separation dissolves. You stop fighting life and start flowing with divine principle. This shift alone has healed conditions that doctors pronounced incurable. Here's how Goldsmith applied these words in practice. When faced with any challenge, physical, emotional, or material, he wouldn't try to fix the problem directly. Instead, he'd return to the consciousness of I and the Father are one. He understood that problems exist only in separation consciousness. In the awareness of oneness with divine source, there can be no lack, no disease, no limitation. Not because you're denying the appearance, but because you're recognizing what's true at the deepest level. This isn't positive thinking or wishful believing. It's recognizing the spiritual reality that underlies all existence. When your consciousness aligns with this truth, outer conditions naturally harmonize. It's as automatic as light dispelling darkness. Goldsmith proved this principle thousands of times. A woman with terminal cancer meditated on I and the Father until she felt the truth of it. 6 months later, doctors found no trace of disease. Her consciousness had shifted from separation to wholeness. The power isn't in the words themselves. It's in the consciousness they awaken. When you really feel I and the Father are one, you're not affirming something you hope is true. You're recognizing what has always been true, but was hidden by false beliefs. This recognition changes everything. Instead of being a powerless human pleading with God for help, you realize your divine consciousness expressing as individual being. The source of all good isn't outside you. It's the very essence of what you are. Goldsmith called this dying to humanhood and being reborn as spiritual consciousness. It sounds mystical, but it's actually the most practical thing you can do. Every problem you face exists only because you've forgotten your true identity. When a businessman was facing bankruptcy, Goldsmith taught him to meditate on these words until he felt his oneness with infinite intelligence. Within weeks, unexpected opportunities appeared, and his business flourished beyond previous success. Let me share how Margaret discovered this principle during her darkest hour. She'd been suffering from rheumatoid arthritis for 12 years. Her joints were so inflamed she could barely dress herself. 3 specialists told her the condition would only worsen with age. In desperation, she attended one of Goldsmith's lectures. When he explained, I and the Father are one, something stirred in her consciousness. She realized she'd been seeing herself as a victim of circumstances, separate from divine healing power. That night, she sat quietly and contemplated these words. Not as a desperate plea, but as a recognition of truth. I and the Father are one meant her true nature was already whole, already perfect, already free from limitation. Over the following weeks, she practiced returning to this awareness whenever pain or fear arose. Gradually, inflammation decreased. Movement became easier. Within 6 months, her doctor pronounced her completely healed, with no explanation for the transformation. David's story reveals how these words transform financial limitation. He was a talented architect who couldn't find steady work. Bill collectors called daily. His family faced losing their home. Every door seemed closed, every opportunity blocked. When he heard about Goldsmith's principle, David was skeptical. How could 4 words change practical circumstances? But desperation made him willing to try anything. He began each day contemplating, "I and the Father are one." Slowly his consciousness shifted. Instead of seeing himself as unemployed and desperate, he began recognizing his oneness with infinite intelligence and creativity. He felt guided to approach firms he'd previously overlooked. Within 3 months, not only did he secure a position, but 2 firms competed for his services. His new salary exceeded his previous income by 40%. The same creative intelligence that was always present had simply found expression through his transformed consciousness. Sarah's marriage was ending after 23 years. Her husband had become distant and critical. They barely spoke without arguing. Divorce seemed inevitable. She felt like a failure, convinced she'd lost the ability to love or be loved. Through a friend's recommendation, she discovered Goldsmith's teachings. The idea that I and the Father are one initially seemed irrelevant to her relationship problems. How could spiritual consciousness heal a broken marriage? But as Sarah practiced this awareness, something profound shifted. She stopped seeing herself as a wounded wife and began recognizing her true nature as divine love expressing. This wasn't denial of problems, it was remembering her essential wholeness. As her consciousness changed, her entire approach to the relationship transformed. She became less reactive, more compassionate, naturally expressing the love that was her true nature. Her husband noticed the change and began responding differently. Today, they describe their marriage as stronger than ever. These transformations aren't accidents or coincidences. They demonstrate a spiritual principle that Goldsmith spent his life teaching. When consciousness changes, conditions change. Not through manipulation or force, but through alignment with divine law. The secret lies in understanding that your true identity isn't the struggling human personality. It's divine consciousness individualized. When you really grasp, I and the Father are one, you stop trying to get things from God and start expressing as God's presence. This shift from seeking to being changes everything. Health, prosperity, loving relationships aren't things you acquire. They're the natural expression of your true nature when false beliefs no longer obstruct the flow. If these transformation stories inspire you, like this video to help others find these teachings, subscribe for more Joel Goldsmith wisdom, and comment, what healing journey resonated most with you? Beyond the basic principle, Goldsmith developed specific techniques to deepen this realization. The first is what he called the practice of the presence. This means regularly returning to the awareness of I and the Father are one throughout your day. Set aside time each morning to contemplate this truth, not as something you're trying to make happen, but as recognition of what already is. Feel the reality of your oneness with infinite intelligence, love, and creative power. Then, during daily activities, whenever you feel stressed, fearful, or limited, pause and return to this awareness. Don't try to solve the specific problem. Return to the consciousness of wholeness. Let divine intelligence work through your transformed awareness. This isn't escapism from practical responsibilities. It's the most practical approach possible because it addresses the consciousness that creates all outer experiences. Change consciousness, and circumstances naturally align with that new awareness. Goldsmith also taught treatment through recognition. When facing any challenge, instead of seeing it as a problem to solve, recognize it as an invitation to remember your true identity. Every difficulty becomes an opportunity for deeper spiritual realization. If illness appears, don't fight the disease, recognize the consciousness that knows no sickness. If lack manifests, don't struggle for supply. Realize your oneness with infinite abundance. If relationships suffer, remember your nature as divine love. This approach seems backwards to human thinking, but it's based on spiritual law. The appearance world is effect. Consciousness is cause. When you change consciousness at the causal level, effects naturally transform to match. A student applied this when her son was arrested for drug possession. Instead of panicking or trying to control outcomes, she recognized the truth. I and my Father are one, and this oneness includes my son. She held to this awareness while taking practical legal steps. The third technique Goldsmith emphasized is living from the invisible. Most people live from appearances, what they see, hear, and feel through physical senses. But spiritual consciousness lives from the invisible realm of truth that underlies all appearances. When you know I and the Father are one, you're not denying what appears to be happening. You're recognizing the deeper reality that transcends appearances. You make decisions from spiritual discernment rather than emotional reaction to circumstances. This doesn't mean ignoring practical responsibilities or avoiding necessary action. It means acting from consciousness of wholeness rather than consciousness of limitation. Your actions become expressions of divine intelligence rather than human struggling. A business owner facing potential bankruptcy applied this principle. Instead of making decisions from fear and desperation, he regularly returned to awareness of his oneness with infinite intelligence. Guided by this consciousness, he made strategic changes that not only saved his company, but increased profits. The fourth technique is what Goldsmith called impersonal love. This means recognizing that the love, wisdom, and power flowing through your consciousness isn't personal to you. It's divine principle, expressing as you and through you to bless all creation. When you understand, I and the Father are one, you realize you're not a separate individual trying to get good things for yourself. Your divine consciousness, individualized for the purpose of expressing infinite good. This shifts motivation from self-serving to service. Paradoxically, this impersonal approach brings more harmony to personal experience. When you stop trying to manipulate outcomes for personal benefit and instead become a clear channel for divine expression, life flows with unprecedented ease and abundance. A healer discovered this when she stopped trying to heal people through personal effort and instead recognized divine love flowing through her consciousness. Her effectiveness increased dramatically because she was no longer interfering with spiritual principle through personal will and effort. Now let's address the challenges you'll likely encounter when applying these principles. The biggest obstacle is the human mind's resistance to letting go of separation consciousness. Your ego mind has been programmed to believe in struggle and limitation. When you first begin practicing I and the Father are one, your mind may rebel with thoughts like, this isn't realistic, or nothing is changing. This resistance is normal. It's the old consciousness defending itself against transformation. Don't fight these thoughts or judge yourself for having them. Simply acknowledge them without giving them power. Then gently return to the awareness of oneness. Think of it like training a muscle. Each return to truth strengthens your spiritual consciousness. Remember that Goldsmith himself struggled with this principle for years before experiencing consistent results. Spiritual realization isn't usually instantaneous. It's a gradual awakening that deepens through faithful practice and patient persistence. Another common challenge is the temptation to use this principle as a technique to get what you want rather than as recognition of what you are. If you approach I and the Father are one as a method to manipulate outcomes, you're still operating from separation consciousness. The power lies not in using these words to change circumstances, but in letting them transform your understanding of identity. When you truly realize your oneness with divine source, right action and harmonious conditions naturally follow. This distinction is crucial. If you're practicing this principle to heal a specific condition, attract a particular relationship, or solve a financial problem, you're missing the deeper truth. The practice is about remembering who you really are. One of Goldsmith's students struggled with this until she realized she was trying to use spiritual principle like a cosmic vending machine. When she shifted to genuine recognition of her divine nature without attachment to specific outcomes, her life transformed in ways beyond her imagination. Impatience is another significant obstacle. In our instant gratification culture, we expect immediate results from spiritual practice. But consciousness transformation operates according to spiritual law, not human timeline. Trust the process even when changes aren't immediately visible. Goldsmith often reminded students that spiritual realization is like pregnancy. There's a gestation period before manifestation appears. Your faithful recognition of I and the Father are one is doing invisible work in consciousness that will eventually bear visible fruit. Sometimes the most important changes happen first in your inner experience. Increased peace, clarity, confidence, compassion. These shifts in consciousness are more valuable than external changes because they're the foundation from which all harmonious experiences flow. A woman practiced this principle for months before seeing dramatic outer changes, but she noticed growing inner stability and wisdom that enabled her to handle challenges with unprecedented grace. Later, this inner transformation manifested as career advancement and relationship healing. The final challenge is doubt when facing serious difficulties. When confronted with major illness, financial crisis, or relationship breakdown, it's easy to think, this spiritual stuff doesn't work for real problems. This doubt can undermine your practice just when persistence is most crucial. Goldsmith faced this challenge when his wife was diagnosed with tuberculosis. Medical treatment had failed, and doctors offered no hope. In that dark moment, he could have abandoned spiritual principle, but instead, he deepened his practice of oneness consciousness. He spent hours in meditation, not trying to heal his wife, but recognizing the truth that in divine consciousness, there is no separation, no disease, no death. He held to this awareness despite overwhelming appearances to the contrary. His wife recovered completely, but more importantly, Goldsmith realized that spiritual principle is most powerful exactly when human resources are exhausted. Your greatest challenges become opportunities for the deepest spiritual realization. If these challenge-breaking techniques speak to your heart, like to support this content, subscribe for advanced spiritual practices, and comment. Which obstacle are you ready to transform now? Advanced practitioners learn to integrate I and the Father are one into daily activities rather than limiting it to formal meditation periods. This constant awareness transforms ordinary activities into spiritual practice and every moment into opportunity for deeper realization. Begin by practicing presence during routine activities, washing dishes, driving, walking. Instead of letting your mind wander to problems or plans, maintain awareness of your oneness with divine intelligence. Feel this consciousness flowing through your actions. This practice gradually dissolves the artificial separation between spiritual time and ordinary time. You begin to live from the consciousness of oneness rather than just thinking about it during designated prayer periods. A busy executive found that maintaining this awareness during meetings, phone calls, and decision-making transformed her effectiveness. Colleagues noticed her increased wisdom and calm authority. Business results improved because divine intelligence was flowing through her professional activities. Goldsmith taught that genuine spiritual realization naturally expresses as practical wisdom in human affairs. When you truly know I and the Father are one, you don't withdraw from worldly responsibilities. You fulfill them from a consciousness of infinite intelligence and love. This might mean making business decisions from spiritual discernment rather than fear or greed. It could involve parenting from awareness of each child's divine nature rather than controlling behavior through manipulation or threats. Your relationships transform when you stop seeing others as separate personalities who can fulfill or disappoint you, and start recognizing divine consciousness expressing as each individual. This doesn't make you passive. It makes you genuinely helpful. A marriage counselor discovered that when she held awareness of I and the Father are one during sessions, both spouses naturally found solutions that had eluded them for years. Divine wisdom was flowing through her consciousness to bless their relationship. Financial abundance becomes natural when you understand that your supply comes from consciousness rather than external sources. I and the Father are one means you're connected to the infinite intelligence and creativity that is the source of all good. This doesn't mean sitting in meditation expecting money to fall from the sky. It means bringing consciousness of infinite abundance to your work, investments, and business decisions. You act from awareness of limitless possibility rather than fear of scarcity. Your value in the marketplace increases when you offer your skills and talents as expressions of divine intelligence rather than desperate attempts to survive. People sense the difference and naturally respond with greater appreciation and compensation. An artist struggled financially until she began creating from consciousness of her oneness with infinite creativity. Her work took on new depth and power that resonated with viewers. Gallery sales increased dramatically because divine beauty was expressing through her consciousness. Physical healing advances when you understand that your true body is spiritual, not material. The physical form is the expression of consciousness, so transformed consciousness naturally produces transformed physical experience. This doesn't mean denying the appearance of illness or avoiding medical care when appropriate. It means recognizing that your essential nature is wholeness itself, and this recognition creates the consciousness in which healing naturally occurs. Goldsmith healed numerous conditions by maintaining awareness that in divine consciousness there is no discord, no degeneration, no limitation. He didn't fight disease. He recognized the spiritual reality that transcends physical appearances. A man with heart disease practiced this principle alongside medical treatment. As his consciousness shifted from identifying with a diseased body to recognizing his spiritual wholeness, his cardiologist documented remarkable improvement that exceeded medical expectations. The ultimate realization is that I and the Father are one isn't a technique you practice. It's the truth you are. When this recognition becomes stable, you stop trying to become spiritual and start living as the spiritual being you've always been. This shift from doing to being marks spiritual maturity. Instead of working to achieve oneness with God, you recognize the oneness that has always existed. Instead of seeking to acquire divine qualities, you express the divine nature that is your essence. Life becomes effortless flow rather than constant struggle. Challenges still appear, but you meet them from consciousness of infinite wisdom and power rather than human limitation. Solutions appear naturally because divine intelligence is your intelligence. A teacher reached this understanding after years of practice. She stopped trying to be spiritual and simply lived from the awareness of her divine nature. Students noticed the change immediately. Her words carried new authority and love that transformed lives effortlessly. At this level of realization, service becomes natural expression rather than imposed duty. When you know your oneness with infinite love, you spontaneously bless others not from personal effort, but as divine love flowing through your consciousness. Your very presence becomes healing because you're no longer projecting human fears and limitations. People feel safe and elevated in your company because they're sensing divine consciousness expressing as your individual being. This isn't superiority or special status. It's the natural result of recognizing what you truly are. Every human being has this same divine nature, and your realization helps awaken this truth in others through silent recognition rather than preaching. Goldsmith's advanced students reported that simply being in his presence brought healing and peace. This wasn't personality magnetism. It was divine consciousness recognizing itself through his transformed awareness and awakening similar recognition in others. The practical result of sustained practice is what Goldsmith called living the illumined life. This means your daily experience naturally reflects spiritual principles without conscious effort to make it happen. Health, abundance, loving relationships, meaningful work, and inner peace become your normal experience, not because you've manipulated conditions, but because your consciousness aligns with divine harmony. You live from your spiritual center rather than reactive human nature. Problems still arise, but you handle them from wisdom rather than fear, love rather than resentment, confidence rather than anxiety. Your responses naturally dissolve difficulties rather than creating additional conflict. This illumined living is available to anyone willing to persistently practice the recognition that I and the Father are one. It's not reserved for special people. It's the natural result of remembering your true identity and living from that awareness. You now possess the key that unlocked thousands of healings and transformations through Joel Goldsmith's ministry. These 4 words, I and the Father, contain infinite power when recognized as the truth of your being rather than wishful thinking. Your spiritual journey doesn't end with understanding this principle. It begins. Each day offers new opportunities to deepen this realization and express your divine nature more fully. Every challenge becomes an invitation to remember who you really are. Start today with just 5 minutes of quiet contemplation. Feel the truth that you and Divine Source are one. Let this awareness guide your thoughts, words, and actions. Trust that spiritual law will manifest harmony as your consciousness embodies this truth. If your spiritual understanding expanded through these Joel Goldsmith secrets, like this video, subscribe for more transformative teachings, and comment, "I am transformed," to confirm your new path.
Have you ever noticed how two simple words, "I am," might be the most powerful phrase you'll ever speak? Yet most of us have been misusing this divine declaration our entire lives, completely unaware of the transformation waiting just beneath the surface of our consciousness. Has this ever happened to you? You wake up, look in the mirror, and immediately your mind fills with limiting thoughts. I am tired. I am stressed. I am not enough. What if I told you that this habitual way of identifying with your temporary human conditions is precisely what keeps you trapped in cycles of limitation, struggle, and lack? But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world, and if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. What you're about to discover might surprise you, even shock you, because it contradicts everything we've been conditioned to believe about ourselves and our identity. When spiritual master Joel Goldsmith spoke of "I am," he wasn't referring to your personality, your job title, your bank account, or any of the temporary conditions of your human experience. He was pointing to something far more profound, the divine consciousness that you actually are. Stay with me until the end of this video, because understanding this truth doesn't just change your thinking. It completely transforms your entire experience of being alive. Imagine what would happen if you suddenly realized that the I that says "I am" isn't your limited human self at all, but the very presence of infinite intelligence speaking through you, the same consciousness that creates galaxies, that orchestrates the perfect harmony of nature, that has never known limitation or lack. When you truly grasp this, something remarkable begins to shift inside you. The problems that once seemed so overwhelming begin to dissolve, not because you've found clever solutions, but because you've discovered they were merely shadows cast by a false identification. You start to recognize that your true nature has never been sick, never lacked anything, never been afraid. These experiences happen only to the false sense of identity that believes itself separate from wholeness. Think about it. How many times have you said, "I am," followed by something limiting, painful, or constraining? Each time, you were innocently misidentifying with temporary conditions rather than the eternal presence that you truly are. This isn't merely positive thinking or affirmations. It's a fundamental recognition of what has always been true, but forgotten, beneath layers of conditioning. The most profound shift occurs when you begin to feel this truth awakening within you, not as an intellectual concept, but as a living reality. Your awareness begins to open to dimensions of your being that have always been present but overlooked. You start to sense the vast intelligence that expresses itself through your individual life. If you're resonating with these deeper truths about the I Am presence, make sure to hit the subscribe button to join our community of spiritual explorers. Each new video takes us one step deeper into awakening our true divine nature. You begin to sense a remarkable hidden truth emerging. The spiritual journey itself starts to transform. Think about it. So many of us have spent years, sometimes decades, searching for enlightenment, awakening, or deeper spiritual connection. We've meditated, attended workshops, read countless books, followed various teachers, all with the underlying belief that what we're seeking is somewhere out there, waiting to be found or achieved through the right practice or technique. But the profound revelation that comes when you truly understand the I Am presence is that the entire search was based on a fundamental misunderstanding. The transformation isn't about finding something new, it's about recognizing what has always been true. You're not a human being having occasional spiritual experiences. You're spiritual consciousness itself having a temporary human experience. This single shift in perspective creates a revolution in your entire mindset. The impact of this realization brings an unexpected peace because the restless seeking finally stops. The journey you thought would take you somewhere else actually brings you home to yourself. There's nowhere to go, nothing to become, nothing to achieve. The completeness you've been seeking has been what you are all along, simply waiting for recognition beneath the noise of your human thinking. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by exploring what happens to your experience of healing. Most approaches to healing assume there's something wrong that needs to be fixed, a problem to be solved, a condition to be overcome. But from the standpoint of I Am consciousness, true healing doesn't work that way at all. When you recognize yourself as divine consciousness, healing happens naturally, without effort or struggle. Your problems don't get solved in the traditional sense. They dissolve because they were never real in spiritual truth. They were just shadows cast by false identification with temporary appearances. This isn't positive thinking or mere affirmations. It's recognizing what you have always been beneath the appearance of limitation. Consider the revelations that occur when this understanding becomes your lived experience. A woman who had struggled with chronic illness for years stopped trying to heal what she thought was wrong with her and instead rested in the recognition of her true nature as divine consciousness. Within weeks, her symptoms began to fade, not because she found the right treatment, but because she stopped energizing the belief in herself as a separate, limited entity that could be sick. The decisions we make from this awareness create an entirely different trajectory for our lives. Instead of constantly reacting to appearances and trying to manipulate external conditions, we begin living from the inside out. Our actions flow from wholeness rather than from the desperate need to fill some perceived lack. What revelations have you experienced when you've momentarily glimpsed your true nature beyond your human identity? Write in the comments, "I remember when I felt this," truth, and share that moment of recognition that went beyond your everyday thinking. This understanding creates a profound liberation in your relationship with the external world. Think about how much of our energy is typically spent seeking validation, approval, and fulfillment from outside ourselves. We're constantly looking to circumstances, people, achievements, or possessions to give us what we think we need. But this pattern creates an endless cycle of dependency and disappointment. The breakthrough moment comes when you realize that this approach has always been backward. When you genuinely understand I Am consciousness, you stop looking outward for completion because you recognize the completeness that you already are. This isn't a mindset shift in the traditional sense. It's a complete reversal of the direction in which you seek security and fulfillment. Behind the scenes of this transformation is a remarkable recalibration of your entire relationship with life. You cease trying to manipulate people, circumstances, or conditions to make yourself feel better. The constant need to control external reality, which creates so much stress and anxiety in our lives, naturally diminishes. Instead, you discover the unshakable foundation of security that exists within you as your true divine nature. This revelation doesn't make you passive or indifferent to improving conditions. Rather, it allows you to engage with life from a completely different starting point. You're no longer driven by the desperate need to acquire something you feel you lack. Your decisions and actions flow from an entirely different source. The impact of this understanding transforms not just how you feel, but how you act in every area of your life. Your behavior shifts naturally and effortlessly because it emerges from a different consciousness. You give instead of primarily seeking to get. You love instead of primarily seeking to be loved. You serve instead of primarily seeking to be served. Consider how this might transform your closest relationships. When you're no longer desperately trying to extract love, approval, or security from others, you become capable of truly loving them as they are. You're free to give without the hidden agenda of getting something in return. This genuine love creates a completely different quality of connection that others can feel, even if they can't name what's different about your presence. The journey of embodying this truth happens naturally when you know yourself as the source of what you seek. You begin acting from the abundance of what you are, rather than the poverty of what you think you lack. And this isn't something you need to force or fabricate. It's the natural expression of your awakening understanding. A businessman shared how this shift completely transformed his approach to work and success. For years, he had been driven by an underlying fear of not having enough, not achieving enough, not being enough. Every decision was colored by this subtle sense of lack. When he began to recognize his true nature as divine consciousness, his actions naturally began to flow from wholeness rather than need. His creativity expanded, his relationships improved, and ironically, his business flourished more than ever before. If you've experienced even a glimpse of this shift from seeking externally to resting in your inner completeness, write in the comments, "I'm finding the source within," and share how this awareness has begun changing your experience. The revelations continue to unfold as this awareness begins to influence your everyday decision-making process. Consider how most of our decisions emerge from either subtle or obvious fear. Fear of loss, fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of not having enough. This fear-based decision-making creates a particular quality of experience that often feels heavy, contracted, and stressful. But when you begin each day by resting in the pure awareness of I am, without adding qualifiers or conditions to it, something extraordinary happens to your decision-making framework. You naturally begin operating from a mindset of peace instead of fear, from abundance instead of lack. This isn't a technique you need to practice or perfect. It emerges organically from your recognition of who you really are. Behind the scenes, what's actually happening is that your decisions are now flowing from a completely different source. Instead of reacting to external circumstances from a place of insecurity, you're responding from the unshakable foundation of your true identity. Your work transforms from being primarily a source of stress and struggle to becoming an expression of joy and service. You bring security to your endeavors rather than seeking security from them. A financial advisor described how this awareness completely transformed his professional practice. For years, he had approached his work from subtle anxiety about performance, competition, and results. When he began consistently resting in I am consciousness each morning, his entire approach shifted. He found himself making recommendations based on what truly served his clients rather than what would generate the highest commissions. Ironically, this integrity-based approach led to even greater success as clients sensed his genuine concern for their well-being. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by exploring how this understanding transforms not just how you see yourself, but how you see everyone around you. One of the most beautiful journeys that unfolds is the natural recognition of the same divine identity in others that you've discovered in yourself. You begin seeing beyond people's temporary challenges, behaviors, and conditioning patterns to their unlimited potential. This shift in perception has transformative power because most people are starving to be truly seen. They long for someone to recognize who they really are beneath their struggles, mistakes, and human limitations. When you hold this awareness of their true nature, it creates a field of possibility around them. You're no longer primarily relating to their problems or personality patterns. You're connecting with the divine consciousness that they are, even if they haven't yet recognized it themselves. A teacher shared how this understanding completely revolutionized her classroom. Instead of seeing struggling students as problems to be fixed, she began recognizing the divine potential in each child, temporarily confused about their true capabilities. The impact was profound as students began responding to being seen for who they truly were, rather than being defined by their challenges or limitations. If you've ever experienced being truly seen by someone who recognized your divine potential beneath your human struggles, drop a comment saying, "Someone saw the real me," and share how that experience changed things for you. Another fascinating transformation occurs in your creative expression. Many of us struggle with creative blocks, self-doubt, or the pressure to produce work that will be recognized and validated by others. This struggle stems from trying to create from our limited personal sense of self, our ego, rather than from the infinite source of all creativity. When you truly understand I am, your entire relationship with creativity undergoes a remarkable shift. You begin to recognize that creativity isn't something you need to generate or force from your human mind. Rather, it's the natural expression of the divine consciousness that you are. The journey becomes less about trying to be creative and more about allowing that infinite creativity to express itself through your unique individual form. An artist described this transformation as getting out of my own way. For years, she had struggled with creative blocks and performance anxiety. When she began practicing the awareness of I am before beginning her work, she noticed that inspiration flowed more naturally. Her artwork became more authentic and powerful because it wasn't filtered through personal agendas or the desperate need for recognition and validation. Ready to continue this journey of spiritual awakening? Click subscribe now and join thousands of others who are discovering the power of the I am consciousness in their daily lives. Don't miss a single insight that could transform your understanding. The revelation here is that all true creativity comes from the same source, divine consciousness expressing itself through individual awareness. Whether you're an artist, writer, musician, entrepreneur, or simply someone seeking to live more creatively, resting in your true identity allows that infinite intelligence to express its unlimited creativity through your unique gifts and talents. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by exploring another profound shift that occurs when you understand I am, what Joel Goldsmith called confident expectancy. This represents a complete transformation in how you meet life's challenges and uncertainties. Instead of anxiety about outcomes or desperate attempts to control the future, you begin to live with an unshakable trust in the divine intelligence that is expressing as your life. This mindset isn't based on blind optimism or positive thinking techniques. It emerges naturally from the direct experience of your true spiritual identity. You recognize that the same intelligence that coordinates billions of functions in your body without your conscious input, that maintains the perfect harmony of the cosmos, is fully capable of handling any situation that arises in your experience. Behind the scenes, what's happening is that you're no longer relying solely on your limited human perspective to navigate life's complexities. You're allowing a greater wisdom to guide your journey. You expect good, not because you're ignoring challenges or difficulties, but because you know yourself as the source of all good. This confident expectancy transforms how you meet apparent problems. Instead of being a victim of circumstances, you become a conscious participant in the divine creativity that is always seeking to express greater harmony, beauty, and love through every situation, even those that initially appeared difficult or challenging. A small business owner shared how this awareness carried him through a period of serious financial threat. Instead of panicking or making fear-based decisions, he maintained a quiet confidence that divine intelligence was working through the situation. This allowed him to see creative solutions and opportunities that would have remained invisible through the lens of fear and anxiety. If you've experienced moments when this kind of confident trust carried you through uncertainty, share in the comments, "I've felt this divine guidance," and tell us about that experience of being supported by something greater than your personal will or effort. One of the most liberating revelations that emerges from understanding I am is the freedom from the exhausting burden of control. Think about how much mental and emotional energy we typically expend trying to figure everything out, plan for every contingency, and control outcomes through force of will. This approach not only creates tremendous stress, it's also built on the illusion that our personal mind is the highest intelligence available to us. The breakthrough comes when you discover that what appears to be your individual life is actually divine consciousness, living itself through your unique expression. This doesn't mean you become passive or fatalistic. Rather, it means you recognize that there's a wisdom far greater than your human thinking that's already orchestrating your life journey with perfect intelligence. Behind the scenes of this transformation is a profound shift in your relationship with uncertainty. Instead of seeing the unknown as threatening, you begin to welcome it as the space where infinite intelligence reveals new possibilities beyond your current understanding. You no longer feel the need to control every aspect of your life through your limited personal will. You can rest in knowing that divine wisdom is expressing as your life experience, guiding you perfectly in each moment. A healthcare professional shared how this understanding completely transformed her approach to her work and life. For years, she had shouldered the immense responsibility of trying to control outcomes for her patients through sheer determination and expertise. The burden had created chronic stress and eventual burnout. When she began recognizing that divine consciousness was working through her rather than her working by herself, everything shifted. Her intuition sharpened, her diagnostic skills improved, and she found herself guided to exactly the right approach for each patient without the exhausting mental strain she'd previously experienced. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by exploring how understanding I am transforms your capacity for genuine compassion. Contrary to what some might assume, this spiritual awareness doesn't isolate you from the world or make you indifferent to human suffering. Instead, it creates the foundation for a deeper, more effective form of compassion that doesn't burn you out or leave you feeling depleted. The revelation here is that when you understand your true nature as divine consciousness, you're no longer trying to save or fix people from a sense of personal responsibility or guilt. You serve from the overflow of love that you are, without the heavy attachment to specific outcomes or the draining sense that it all depends on your personal effort. This mindset shift creates a completely different quality of service. You become capable of holding space for others in their pain without being overwhelmed by it, because you recognize that their true spiritual identity is untouched by their current circumstances. You can offer practical help when appropriate without the desperate need to control the results. A social worker described how this awareness completely transformed her effectiveness in working with challenging cases. Instead of being drained by compassion fatigue, she found herself energized by recognition of the divine potential in each client, regardless of their current struggles. Her presence itself became healing because she wasn't approaching them from need or pity, but from the overflow of wholeness. If you've experienced moments when true compassion flowed through you without effort or depletion, comment with, "I've felt compassion flow through me," and share what that experience revealed to you about your deeper nature. One of the most beautiful transformations that emerges from understanding I am is that you naturally become a healing presence wherever you go. This isn't about developing special healing techniques or abilities. It's about the natural impact of being established in your own truth. Think about people you've encountered who emanate a sense of peace and safety just by being themselves. That's the quality of presence we're exploring here. Behind the scenes of this phenomenon is a profound shift in how you relate to others. When you're no longer desperately trying to change people or fix situations from a sense of personal responsibility, you create a space where genuine healing can occur. People feel safe around you because they sense, often unconsciously, that you're not trying to make them different or better. You're simply being the love and peace that you are, which naturally uplifts everyone in your vicinity. The revelation here is that the most powerful service often comes through being rather than doing. Joel taught that when you're so established in your own truth that you become a healing presence, you contribute something invaluable to every environment you enter. People feel accepted rather than judged, appreciated rather than evaluated, and in that atmosphere of unconditional acceptance, genuine transformation becomes possible. A counselor shared how this understanding completely revolutionized her practice. Instead of approaching each client with a strategic plan to help them change, she began simply holding space with the recognition of their divine wholeness beneath their temporary struggles. Clients reported feeling truly seen, perhaps for the first time, and this recognition itself became the catalyst for profound healing and change. Now I want to go even deeper into this topic by exploring what Joel Goldsmith called spiritual maturity and freedom. This represents perhaps the most significant milestone in the journey of understanding I am. When you stop seeking to become spiritual and start living from the spirituality that you are, life undergoes a remarkable transformation. It's no longer a struggle to achieve something or prove your worth. It becomes an authentic expression of joy and service flowing naturally from your true nature. The insight at the core of this journey is that spiritual freedom doesn't come from acquiring something you don't have. It emerges from recognizing what you've always been beneath the layers of conditioning and false identification. You're free to be authentically yourself without apology or explanation, growing and learning from wholeness rather than from need. This mindset shift creates an entirely different quality of living. You're no longer driven by the desperate need to achieve spiritual status or attainment. You've discovered that what you've been seeking through endless practices and pursuits has actually been the truth of your being all along. This doesn't mean you stop growing or learning. It means you do so from an entirely different foundation, from the abundance of what you are, rather than the poverty of what you think you lack. A spiritual seeker described this transformation as the end of the journey and the beginning of life. After decades of practices aimed at becoming enlightened or spiritually advanced, she finally recognized that what she had been seeking had always been present as her true nature. This realization brought a profound peace and authenticity to her life that all her previous spiritual achievements had failed to deliver. If you've experienced moments of this spiritual freedom, when you've temporarily stopped striving to become something and simply rested in the truth of your being, share in the comments, "I've tasted this freedom," and describe how it felt different from your ordinary seeking state. Something remarkable happens when your understanding of I am deepens. Your individual awakening becomes a gift to humanity's collective consciousness. This isn't just about personal transformation anymore. It's about your contribution to the evolution of consciousness itself. Every person who recognizes their true spiritual identity creates a ripple effect that extends far beyond their individual experience. The insight here reveals a hidden truth about spiritual awakening. It's not an isolated journey. Each of us is connected to the collective field of human consciousness. When you awaken to your true nature as divine consciousness, you're not just transforming your own life, you're actually changing the frequency of that collective field, making awakening more accessible for others around you. This perspective completely shifts the impact of your spiritual journey. It's no longer just about your personal enlightenment or evolution. Your recognition of truth becomes a service to all of humanity. Even without saying a word, your consciousness of truth becomes contagious, spreading to everyone whose life you touch. This is why Joel Goldsmith emphasized that one person fully awake to their true identity can uplift an entire community. A meditation teacher described witnessing this phenomenon in retreat settings. When even one person in the group had a profound recognition of their true nature, the entire atmosphere in the room would shift. Others would spontaneously experience deeper states of awareness, often without knowing why. This demonstrates the tangible impact your consciousness has on the world around you. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by exploring perhaps the most essential aspect of understanding I am, that this transformation is not a one-time event, but an ongoing process of deepening into your truth. Many spiritual seekers imagine enlightenment as a final destination, a permanent state they'll reach after sufficient effort or practice. But Joel Goldsmith emphasized that the journey of awakening unfolds moment by moment throughout our entire lifetime. The revelation here completely transforms your approach to spiritual practice. Every moment becomes a fresh opportunity to remember who you really are and to live from that remembering. This isn't about attaining some future state of consciousness, but about continually returning to the truth that's already present within you. It's about bringing that awareness into each new circumstance, challenge, or relationship you encounter. This ongoing practice represents the most practical spiritual approach possible, resting in the recognition that you are not separate from the source of all healing, all supply, all love, and all peace. This isn't abstract philosophy. It's about bringing this awareness into your everyday experience, moment by moment. A spiritual practitioner described this ongoing journey as continually coming home to myself. She noticed that rather than reaching some permanent state of enlightenment, her experience was one of repeatedly recognizing and then temporarily forgetting her true nature, with each remembering becoming deeper and more stable than the last. The path itself became less about arriving somewhere and more about the beauty of repeatedly awakening to what's always been true. If you've noticed this rhythm of remembering and forgetting in your own journey of awakening, share in the comments, "I'm dancing between remembering and forgetting," and tell us what helps you return to the recognition of your true nature when you've temporarily lost sight of it. As we come to the close of our exploration, I want to acknowledge something important. If these words have resonated deeply with you, it's not by accident. There's a recognition that happens when truth meets truth, when the divine consciousness that I am speaks to the divine consciousness that you are. That recognition is beyond intellectual understanding. It's a felt sense of coming home to yourself. I'd love to continue this journey of awakening with you. If you haven't already, consider subscribing to this channel. Each video is created with the intention of awakening more of us to the profound truth of who we really are, beyond our human stories and limitations. Your presence in this community adds to the collective field of awakening that we're creating together. If this message has touched something deep within you, leave a comment saying, "I recognize the truth within me," and share any insight or question that emerged for you while watching. Your sharing becomes a gift to others who might be experiencing similar recognitions or challenges along their journey. And if you found value in this exploration, a simple like helps others discover this message who might be ready for exactly this reminder of their true nature Every engagement creates a ripple that extends far beyond what we can see. Right over here, you'll find another video that explores how to maintain this awareness of I am, even during challenging times when the world seems to pull you back into limited identification. Click there when you're ready to deepen this understanding even further. Until we meet again, remember, the divine consciousness that you truly are has never been touched by human limitation. Rest in that truth, and watch as your entire experience of life transforms. Have you ever wondered why, despite all your devotion, all your prayers, all your spiritual seeking, you still feel separated from God? What if everything you've been taught about where to find the divine has been leading you in the wrong direction? What if the sacred temple you've been searching for your entire life isn't in Jerusalem, isn't in any church or holy building, but is actually the very body you inhabit right now? For thousands of years, humanity has built magnificent cathedrals, traveled to sacred sites, and bowed before altars made of stone and gold, believing that's where God dwells. We've been conditioned to think of ourselves as unworthy visitors, seeking entrance to a divine dwelling place, somewhere outside ourselves. But what if this entire paradigm has kept us from the most revolutionary truth ever spoken? That you are the living temple of the Most High. This isn't mysticism or New Age philosophy. This is the forgotten foundation of authentic spirituality that changes everything the moment you truly grasp it. When this truth awakens within you, your relationship with prayer transforms, your understanding of healing shifts, and your entire approach to life's challenges begins operating from a completely different dimension of consciousness. Has this ever happened to you? You pray fervently, asking God to help you, to heal you, to provide for you, yet nothing seems to change. You feel like your prayers are bouncing off the ceiling, never quite reaching their destination. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. The reason might shock you. You've been praying to a God you imagine is somewhere else, when all along, the divine presence you're seeking has been dwelling within the sacred temple of your own being. Think about the profound implications of this for just a moment. Every time you've looked outside yourself for God, you've been turning away from the very place where the infinite presence actually resides. It's like standing inside a magnificent palace, searching desperately for the palace, never realizing you're already there. Stay with me until the end of this message, because what you're about to discover will completely transform how you see yourself, how you pray, how you heal, and how you navigate every challenge you face. This understanding has been hidden in plain sight within the teachings of Jesus, the wisdom of the mystics, and the deepest revelations of every authentic spiritual tradition. Once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Once you know yourself as the living temple, everything changes, not because you've become something new, but because you've finally remembered what you've always been. The question isn't whether you can become the temple. The question is, what happens inside you when you finally realize you already are? When Jesus stood before the religious authorities and declared, "I am," they wanted to stone him for blasphemy. They thought he was claiming to be God in some exclusive, arrogant way. But they completely missed the revolutionary revelation he was offering. He wasn't saying, "Only I am God and you are not." He was demonstrating what becomes possible when a human being fully realizes they are the living temple, when the consciousness of divinity awakens within the sacred space of a person. This wasn't a claim of superiority, it was an invitation to transformation. Think about the profound impact of this for your own journey. Every time you say the words "I am," you're making a declaration about your identity. But here's the hidden truth most people never grasp. When you speak those two words, who is actually speaking? Is it your personality, your history, your circumstances? Or is it the divine presence that dwells within the temple of your being? This single shift in understanding changes everything. You're not a limited human trying to reach God. You're the temple through which God is expressing right now, in this moment. But here's where most people unknowingly sabotage themselves. Listen to how you use these powerful words in your daily life. I am tired. I am broke. I am sick. I am not good enough. I am afraid. Every single time you attach I am to a limitation, you're doing something spiritually catastrophic. You're claiming that the temple of the living God is defiled by temporary conditions. You're saying that the infinite presence dwelling within you is somehow constrained by circumstances that exist only in the realm of appearances. This is the mindset trap that keeps people bound to suffering even while they pray for freedom. The temple cannot be sick because sickness is a condition of the body, not of the sacred space within. The temple cannot be broke because poverty is a circumstance, not the nature of divine consciousness. When you identify the I am within you, the very presence of God expressing as your awareness, with anything temporary, you're giving power to illusion. You're treating the eternal as if it were subject to the temporary. If this resonates with you, subscribe to the channel. I share practical spiritual wisdom designed to shift your consciousness and transform your daily experience. Now I want to go even deeper into this topic because understanding this intellectually isn't enough. The real transformation happens when you begin to catch yourself in these moments of false identification and make a different choice. When you feel pain in your body and your mind automatically wants to say, I am in pain, you pause. You recognize that pain is an experience the body is having, but the temple, the I am that you truly are, remains untouched, whole, complete. This isn't denying reality. It's discerning between what is temporary and what is eternal, between what happens in the outer court and what dwells in the inner sanctuary. If this revelation is beginning to shift something in your awareness, write in the comments, I am the temple. The most revealing aspect of Jesus' life wasn't what he said, it was how he used language to demonstrate a completely different state of consciousness. Pay close attention to this. He never once declared, I am sick and need healing. He never said, I am poor and need provision. He never claimed, I am weak and need strength. Instead, his declarations were always anchored in eternal truth. I am the resurrection and the life. I am the light of the world. I am the way, the truth, and the life. Do you see the pattern? He only used I am to identify with what is unchangeable, eternal, divine. This wasn't positive thinking or affirmation. This was temple consciousness in action. When Jesus healed the sick, he wasn't performing supernatural miracles that defied natural law. He was operating from a level of awareness where the temple recognizes its true nature, and physical reality has no choice but to align with that recognition. The healings were natural outcomes of consciousness that knows itself as the dwelling place of infinite power. When the temple awakens to what it truly is, transformation isn't something you try to create. It becomes inevitable. Behind the scenes of every healing, every demonstration of abundance, every moment of what we call miraculous intervention, there was simply this: a human being who had completely realized they were the living temple. And from that recognition, the divine presence flowed without obstruction. This is the hidden truth that changes your entire spiritual journey. You've probably spent years, maybe decades, trying to become more spiritual, more worthy, more enlightened. You've meditated, prayed, studied, practiced, all in the pursuit of reaching some future state where you'll finally be close enough to God for things to change. But here's the revelation that shatters that entire paradigm. The temple is already built. The divine presence doesn't need to be invited in, earned, or achieved. It's already there, dwelling in the innermost sanctuary of your being, in complete fullness right now. Your spiritual path isn't about construction or improvement. It's about recognition. You're not becoming the temple. You're waking up to the fact that you've been the temple. All along, the journey isn't about transformation from one thing to another. It's about the removal of false beliefs that have hidden your true nature from your own awareness. Every spiritual practice, every moment of prayer, every insight you gain isn't building something new. It's dissolving the illusion that you were ever anything other than the sacred dwelling place of the infinite. The impact of this understanding on your daily life is enormous. You stop striving and start resting. You stop seeking and start recognizing. You stop trying to become worthy and start living from the worthiness that has always been your true identity. Now I want to go even deeper into this topic because when this truth really lands in your consciousness, it revolutionizes how you approach every challenge, every fear, every moment of doubt. The decisions you make begin to flow from a completely different source, not from the anxious human personality trying to figure things out, but from the wisdom of the temple itself. If you're experiencing a shift in how you see yourself and your spiritual journey, share in the comments. The temple is already built. Let me share a story that illustrates the profound impact of this understanding on actual human suffering. There was a woman who lived with chronic pain for 7 years. She visited countless doctors, tried every treatment available, spent thousands on therapies, medications, and alternative approaches. Nothing worked. The pain remained, constant, unrelenting, dominating every moment of her existence. Her entire identity had become wrapped around this condition. She woke up thinking, "I am in pain." She went to sleep thinking, "I am in pain." Every conversation, every decision, every thought was filtered through this false identification. Then someone asked her a question that shattered everything. Can the temple of God hurt? Can infinite spirit suffer? At first, she was confused, even angry. The pain was real. How could anyone suggest otherwise? But the question wasn't denying her experience. It was pointing to something deeper, a fundamental confusion about identity. She had been claiming that her true self, the temple, the divine dwelling place within her, was the thing experiencing pain. But what if the pain was happening to the body while the temple remained untouched, whole, complete? This revelation didn't happen overnight. It took weeks of sitting with this question, returning to it again and again. But slowly, something shifted in her consciousness. She began to discern between the temple and the temporary experiences moving through it. The pain didn't immediately vanish, but her relationship with it transformed. She stopped saying, "I am in pain," and started recognizing there is pain being experienced, but the temple I am is whole. Within months, the pain that had dominated 7 years of her life dissolved completely. Not because she fought it, but because she stopped identifying with it. The same principle applies to every area of life, including the one that causes so much anxiety and fear for most people, money and provision. When you understand yourself as the living temple, your entire mindset around abundance undergoes a complete transformation. You realize that your job, your clients, your investments, your business, none of these are your actual source. They're simply channels through which the infinite supply dwelling in your temple flows into visible form. There was a man whose business was collapsing. Every morning he woke up thinking, "I am failing. I am going broke. I am losing everything." His prayers were desperate pleas for God to send customers to provide a miracle from outside. Behind the scenes of his struggle was a profound misunderstanding about where his supply actually originated. The breakthrough came when he stopped identifying as a broke businessman and started recognizing the truth. The temple I am houses infinite supply, the channels through which Money flows might change. One business might end while another begins. One client might leave while three others appear. But the source dwelling within the temple never diminishes, never fails, never runs dry. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because understanding temple consciousness isn't just about solving individual problems. It's about a complete reorientation of how you move through life, how you make decisions, how you relate to everything and everyone around you. The hidden truth is that when you know yourself as the living temple, you begin to see the temple in others too. If this understanding is beginning to shift how you see your challenges, drop a comment saying, "My source is within." The real transformation begins when temple consciousness stops being something you think about occasionally and becomes your natural state of being. This is where many people stumble on their spiritual journey. They have these profound moments of insight, these glimpses of truth. But then they return to their default programming of identifying with circumstances, conditions, and limitations. The practice isn't about perfection. It's about returning again and again to the awareness of what you truly are. When you first open your eyes in the morning, before your mind fills with worries and tasks and problems, there's a moment of pure presence. In that moment, you can make a powerful choice. Instead of immediately identifying as a person with problems to solve, you can recognize, "I am the temple awakening to divine consciousness." This isn't trying to create something that doesn't exist. It's simply acknowledging what has always been true, but hidden beneath layers of false belief. As you move through your day, working, speaking, making decisions, you return to this recognition. I am the temple through which infinite intelligence flows, not as a mantra to repeat mechanically, but as a living awareness that reshapes your entire experience. But here's where the real power of temple consciousness reveals itself: in moments of crisis, when fear grips your chest, when circumstances appear impossible, when everything in your world seems to be falling apart. There's a technique that can instantly shift your entire state. It's called the pause. In that moment when panic wants to take over, when your mind races to find solutions, when anxiety threatens to overwhelm you, you do something radical. You stop. You don't react. You don't try to fix. You don't engage with the fear. You simply pause and return to the fundamental question: what is the truth of this temple I am? If this message spoke to your soul, leave a like. It helps others who are searching for this understanding find their way here. The mind will scream at you that the situation is urgent, that you need to act now, that pausing is irresponsible or naive. But in that pause, something extraordinary happens. You create space between the temple and the storm that's raging around it. You remember that no matter what appears to be happening in the outer world, the inner sanctuary remains unchanged. The truth is always the same. The temple is whole. The temple is supplied. The temple is safe. Not because circumstances prove it, but because God dwells within it. This isn't denial of reality. It's discernment about what is ultimately real and what is temporary appearance. The impact of this simple practice on your quality of life is profound. Decisions that once felt overwhelming become clear. Problems that seemed insurmountable begin to dissolve. The anxiety that used to dominate your thoughts loses its grip. Because you're no longer identifying with the turbulence, you're resting in the unchanging truth of the temple. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because temple consciousness doesn't just change how you see yourself, it completely transforms how you see and relate to every other person you encounter. This revelation has the power to heal relationships that seemed beyond repair and bring peace where there was only conflict. If the pause is speaking to something in your experience, write in the comments, "I choose the pause." Something remarkable happens when you begin to live from temple consciousness. your entire perception of other people transforms. You start to see that every person you encounter, whether they're aware of it or not, is also a living temple. The difficult co-worker who frustrates you, the family member who hurt you deeply, the stranger who cut you off in traffic, the person who betrayed your trust. Beneath every action, every word, every behavior, there's a temple that has temporarily forgotten what it is. This awareness doesn't make you passive or doormat-like. It doesn't mean tolerating abuse or pretending harmful behavior is acceptable. What it does is eliminate the poison of judgment that otherwise consumes your peace. When someone wrongs you, the natural human response is to see them as the enemy, to build walls, to attack or withdraw. But from temple consciousness, you recognize something profoundly different. That person isn't acting from their true nature. They're acting from amnesia, from the false identity that has covered over the temple they are. Just as you've forgotten at times and acted from fear, anger, or pain, they too are lost in temporary identification with something that isn't real. This perspective shift has extraordinary power in your relationships. The resentment you've been carrying for years begins to dissolve because you see the situation through new eyes. The person didn't wrong the temple you are. They couldn't, because the temple is untouchable. They interacted with you while both of you had forgotten your true nature. When you remember, forgiveness isn't something you have to force. It happens naturally because you see the innocence behind the ignorance. But here's another revelation that deepens this understanding even further. Once you recognize yourself as the living temple, you realize that external circumstances, no matter how severe or overwhelming they appear, cannot defile your true nature. Think about the impact this has on how you process challenges. A medical diagnosis might describe something happening in the physical body, but it says absolutely nothing about the temple of consciousness that you are. The temple remains pure, whole, untouched by any condition that appears in the realm of matter. Financial loss might affect your bank account, drain your savings, change your lifestyle, but it doesn't diminish the infinite supply dwelling within your temple by even a fraction. Behind the scenes of every apparent catastrophe is this unchanging truth. The temple cannot be contaminated by what happens in the temporary world. This isn't spiritual bypassing or denying that difficult things happen. It's having the discernment to distinguish between what is eternally true and what is temporarily appearing. The body gets sick, but the temple is whole. The bank account empties, but the source is full. The relationship ends, but love remains. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because understanding these principles intellectually is one thing, but living them consistently when life becomes genuinely difficult is where the real spiritual work happens. Every seeker faces moments when temple consciousness seems like a beautiful idea that simply doesn't work in the harsh reality of their circumstances. If you're beginning to see others differently through this lens, share in the comments, "I see the temple in all." Let's be honest about what happens when this understanding truly takes root in your consciousness. There comes a point where temple consciousness is no longer something you practice. It becomes who you are. You're not a person trying to remember spiritual truths anymore. You're the living temple moving through human experience, and every single action, every conversation, every ordinary moment becomes an expression of the divine presence dwelling within you. This shift is subtle but profound. When you're working, you're not thinking, "I need to remember I'm the temple while I do this task." You simply know that the intelligence accomplishing the work is flowing from the inner sanctuary. Work stops being something you do to survive and becomes worship, the temple expressing creativity and purpose through your hands. When you speak with someone, conversation transforms into communion. You're not two separate people exchanging words. You're two temples recognizing each other, even if only one is consciously aware of it. Every moment, no matter how mundane it appears, becomes sacred because you're living from this constant awareness that you are the dwelling place of the infinite. But here's where I need to address something that every genuine spiritual seeker eventually faces, and it's rarely talked about with real honesty. There will be times when you practice everything we've discussed, when you return again and again to temple consciousness, when you pause and recognize the truth of who you are, and absolutely nothing seems to change. The illness doesn't heal, the financial pressure doesn't lift, the relationship doesn't mend. The problem you've been holding in consciousness as already resolved continues to persist in your physical experience. This is the moment when your faith is genuinely tested. Your mind screams that none of this works, that you're fooling yourself, that you need to abandon this spiritual nonsense and deal with reality like everyone else. Behind the scenes of every spiritual breakthrough is this period of seeming silence, where the temple appears not to be responding. But here's the hidden truth about how spiritual realization actually works. It operates in consciousness first, not in conditions. The transformation happens in the invisible realm of awareness long before it manifests as visible evidence in your circumstances. Sometimes that gap between inner realization and outer demonstration is minutes. Sometimes it's months. The time frame isn't what matters. What matters is remaining faithful to the truth of the temple you are, regardless of what appears. Your job isn't to make things happen or to figure out how the change will occur. Your job is simply to know what is true and refuse to be moved by what appears to contradict it. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because this is where most people either break through to genuine spiritual freedom or fall back into the old patterns of fear and struggle. The decisions you make during these dark nights of the soul determine whether temple consciousness becomes your living reality or just another spiritual concept you tried and abandoned. If you've experienced this testing period and chosen to remain faithful anyway, write in the comments, "I trust the unseen work." One of the most profound transformations that happens when you awaken to temple consciousness shows up in your relationships. Think about how most people approach connection with others. They're searching for someone to complete them, to fill the emptiness inside, to finally make them feel loved, valued, worthy. Every relationship becomes a transaction. I'll give you what you need if you give me what I need. And when the other person inevitably fails to fill that infinite void, disappointment, resentment, and pain follow. But when you recognize you are the living in temple, the entire foundation shifts. You're not empty, you're not incomplete, you're not lacking love. The temple is already full, overflowing with divine presence, infinite love, complete wholeness. You don't need another person to give you what you already are. This realization doesn't make you less interested in relationship. It makes you free to love from a completely different place. Instead of two needy people trying to extract from each other what neither can provide, you have two temples, sharing the fullness they already possess. The impact on your relationships is extraordinary. You stop manipulating, controlling, demanding. You stop keeping score. You stop the exhausting dance of trying to get love by performing, pleasing, or pretending. You love because the temple you are is love itself expressing. When someone can't meet your expectations, you don't collapse because your foundation isn't in them. It's in the divine presence dwelling within you. When someone leaves, you grieve the loss, but you don't lose yourself because you know what you are doesn't depend on who stays or goes. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because everything we've explored leads to this ultimate integration, living every single moment as the conscious temple of God, not just during meditation or when you remember, not just when things are peaceful or when you're feeling spiritual, but always. In every circumstance, through every experience, you wake in the morning as the temple, becoming aware of itself. You move through your work as the temple expressing divine intelligence. You love as the temple, sharing the infinite love it contains. You rest at night as the temple returning to conscious stillness. There's a beautiful metaphor that captures this perfectly. Think of a wave on the ocean. The wave has its own shape, its own movement, its own unique expression. It rises and falls, crashes on the shore, interacts with other waves. But the entire time, it never forgets what it truly is, ocean. It's not trying to become ocean. It's not hoping that one day it might be worthy of being ocean. It simply knows that beneath the temporary form of wave, the eternal substance is ocean, always has been, always will be. This is what it means to live as the conscious temple. You're the human expression that never forgets the divine presence dwelling within. You still have your personality, your preferences, your unique way of moving through the world. You'll still make mistakes, still have moments of forgetfulness, still experience the full range of human emotion. But underneath every experience, there's this unshakable knowing of what you are. If this vision of integration speaks to where you want to go on your journey, share in the comments, "I am the wave that knows the ocean." You know, if you've made it this far in our conversation today, something inside you is recognizing the truth of what we've been exploring together. This isn't just information you stumbled upon by accident. This is part of your journey, part of your awakening to the temple you've always been. And I'm genuinely grateful you chose to spend this time here with me. If these teachings are resonating with where you are on your path, I'd love for you to subscribe to the channel. I create content like this regularly, practical spiritual wisdom that you can actually apply to transform your daily experience. These aren't abstract theories. They're living principles that change how you show up in the world when you really understand them. And if this message landed exactly when you needed to hear it, let me know by writing in the comments, "This was meant for me." I read every comment, and there's something powerful about declaring your recognition, about putting words to the shift that's happening in your awareness. If you found value in what we shared today, a simple like on the video helps this message reach others who are searching for exactly this understanding. Someone out there is asking the same questions you were asking before you clicked on this video, and your engagement helps them find their way here. There's a video right here that goes even deeper into how to live from this consciousness when life gets really challenging, when the old patterns try to pull you back and doubt creeps in. Click and continue with me over there. Let's keep walking this path together.